Alright, we're back. Alright, we're back. We've been talking about the layers of history being peeled away, and today we're looking at something a bit more heavy. We're diving into the shadow history of how certain figures were erased from our collective memory.
And erased is such a polite way to put it, isn't it? It feels more like a systematic scrubbing.
Like someone went through the cosmic hard drive with a magnet.
Exactly. We're looking at The Hymn by Jackson and Howard. They aren't just talking about myths, they're talking about a deliberate rebranding of the divine.
Which is usually just a fancy way of saying the winners wrote the textbook.
Right. And let's look at how they start this section. They're talking about the Egyptian mysteries. They mention a ritual where a candidate is led into the inner sanctuary and a priest whispers this. Bombshell. Osiris is the black god.
Wait, black god? That sounds so provocative. Like it's intentionally subverting everything we think we know about the solar, light-centric myths of Egypt.
It is, and it leads directly into the figure of Set. Now, we usually think of Set as the villain, the bringer of chaos. But the authors are pulling from Albert Churchwartier, suggesting Set was originally first in glory and power.
So he's not the bad guy, he's just the guy who got demoted?
Precisely. They even link him to the Yazidis' peacock angel. There's this idea of a fall that isn't a fall into sin, but a fall from grace in the eyes of the new, established order.
It's the classic rebranding tactic. You take a powerful established deity, call them a demon, and suddenly you're the hero of the new religion.
And look how they describe Set's nature. They call him the Black Sun, the sun at midnight. He's linked to the desert of time and space that separates Tifereth, the solar center, from Kether, the absolute.
That's a heavy metaphor. The desert isn't just sand, it's the abyss. It's that terrifying, empty space you have to cross to actually find something real.
Speaking of terrifying, let's talk about his look. The book says he's this strange composite beast. A long forked tail, a twisted trunk-like nose, pointed ears.
Some say a donkey, but the authors point to Kenneth Grant's idea that he might be a fennec fox. The howling in the desert.
I love that, it's so visceral. But then they pivot to the camel. They say in Arabic culture the camel symbolizes female genitalia, and they link this to the angel Samael descending in the form of a camel.
Okay, we went from ancient Egypt to, well, biology very quickly.
It's a bit much, but it fits the theme, doesn't it? The intersection of the sacred and the intensely physical.
It does, and it brings us to the Hebrew letter Gimel. It means camel, but esoterically, it's the transition point, the bridge. It's the threshold of Deat, the veil of the abyss. The authors argue that crossing this abyss is what transforms the seeker. You move from a state of the fool, the innocent child, into the wise fool. You don't just learn things, you become the magus.
That's such a powerful reframe. We usually think of the fool as someone to be pitied or corrected, but here, the goal is to reach a state where your eyes are actually open.
Though looking at the next part, the open eyes might involve some pretty intense imagery. They talk about the mark of Set or the mark of Cain as a symbol of death and the gateway to the abyss.
And then they take us even further afield to the Gobi Desert and the myth of Shambhala. They're suggesting these hidden places, these utopias like Shangri-La aren't just legends, but actual sites of spiritual evolution.
Or just places where people go to hide from the mess they made of the rest of the world.
But the book claims Shambhala is inhabited by Mahatmas beings who have finished their evolutionary cycle but chose to return in leather clothing, human bodies, to accelerate our progress.
Leather clothing? That's a vivid way to even describe being human.
It's a bit much, honestly. Like we're just temporary suits for much older, much weirder souls?
That's the claim, and it ties back to the draconian cult mentioned earlier, the idea that the heat of sexuality, the Kundalini, is the same desert heat that Set represents.
So the forbidden knowledge of the ancients was basically just intense, transformative experience that the later church tried to label as demonic or succubus-driven?
Exactly. They use the term allogenes, the stranger, the foreigner. To achieve true spiritual height, you have to become an outsider to the normal world. You become a wanderer, like Set or Cain.
Which is a lonely way to live. The book ends this section on a really heavy note that this spiritual freedom often leads to being an outcast, or even being executed by the society you're trying to help.
Yeah. The price of seeing the truth is often being called a stranger in your own home.
It's a heavy start to the chapter. We'll leave it there for now. Next time, we're going to look at the all-seeing eye and the pillars of the wise. All right, let's get into it. We're moving from the desert heat of Set into something a bit more pervasive. The authors start this section with a quote from Baudelaire about walking through forests of symbols that watch you with hidden eyes.
That is incredibly creepy. Like the very environment is sentient.
It sets the stage perfectly for what they tackle next, the all-seeing eye. and they make a really bold claim right out of the gate. They say that despite how much we see this symbol everywhere in logos, in art, in pop culture, it's actually received extremely scant interpretation in mainstream tradition.
Because if you actually understood what it meant, you might stop feeling so comfortable under its gaze.
Exactly. They suggest this scant interpretation is because the symbol belongs to pre-human mysteries. They're saying the eye isn't just a symbol of God watching you, it's the original hieroglyph of the Watchers.
The Watchers. Back to those guys from the last episode.
Yeah, and they link it directly to a Luciferian stream of wisdom. They say the eye represents the fire of knowledge that pierces through the veil of ignorance. It's an ekpyrosius, a conflagration.
So it's a flash of fire that burns away the lies.
Precisely. And look at how they trace the linguistics here. They connect the Hebrew word for watchers, ear or irin, to the Egyptian ear-t, which means eye. Even in cuneiform, it's were.
So it's a metaphor. They're really trying to show a literal linguistic trail of breadcrumbs leading back to the same source.
They are. They even link it to the Eye of Horus and the concept of Horus who rules with eyes. It all flows into the Phoenician O and the Hebrew ayin, which literally means eye. And here's the kicker. They say the Hebrew name Azazel actually starts with that very ayin. The eye is baked into the name of the Fallen One himself.
So the symbol isn't just about him, it's literally his signature?
It is. And they take it further, linking the root oz, which means strength, or goat, to the eye, and the fiery sword held by the cherubim. They're saying Azazel, the Fallen One, was actually the first blacksmith, the master of metals.
Which ties back to what we said earlier about Seth being a master of metals. It's all one giant interconnected web of forbidden technology.
And of course they bring in the serpent. The authors claim the tradition of the serpent in Eden is actually a memory of a covenant made under the tree of knowledge. That eyes will be open moment, that wasn't a punishment. It was the transmission of the eye.
I mean, I've always felt a bit more enlightened after a good taco, but this is opening your eyes to a whole different level.
Well, stay focused, Paco, because they pivot from the serpent to something much more modern. They look at the Masonic use of the eye. They mention the jewels of the Scottish Rite officers, where the eye radiates from within a triangle.
And they link it back to the great architect of the universe. The idea that the eye is always open, weighing every soul.
But then, and this is where it gets controversial, they bring in the Illuminati. They argue that the eye in the triangle on the US dollar bill isn't some shadowy conspiracy for world domination, but a direct legacy of Adam Weishaupt's radical vision.
Here we go. It's actually a misunderstood hero trope.
But listen to their reasoning. They say Weishaupt's goal was human perfection through the realization of inner divinity. He wanted a universal brotherhood based on free love and equality. They even call him a proto-communist or an anarchist.
Wait, the Illuminati were anti-authoritarian? That's the opposite of the shadow government vibe we always hear about.
That's the author's point. They claim the conspiracy is actually a smear campaign by the church and the monarchy to suppress a movement that was actually about spiritual and social liberation.
It's so much easier to call someone a satanic conspirator than to admit they might be right about equality and freedom.
It's a massive claim. And they end this section by pointing to the Royal Arch Masonry in Jerusalem, where they find even more traces of this Luciferian heritage hidden glyphs, the white porphyry stone, and the secret word of the Great Mystery.
It feels like every time we pull a thread, the whole tapestry just starts unraveling.
And we're only just beginning to see the pattern. Next time, we'll look at the Pillars of the Wise. Alright, we're moving deeper into the architecture of the shadow history. We left off with the all-seeing eye as a signature of the Watchers. Now, the authors take us to the very physical structures of the Lodge of the Pillars.
The pillars. You know, I was looking at some photos of old Masonic lodges today, and there's always that heavy, imposing presence of the two columns. They're more than decor.
Not at all. Look how they phrase this. They call them the Pillars of Tubal Cain. And they aren't just standing there. They're inscribed with the magical knowledge of divine dynasties, kings, and giants instructed by the stars themselves.
Wait, kings and giants? Is this a history book or a fantasy novel?
To the authors, there's no difference. They argue that the layout of a Masonic lodge, the sun and moon atop the pillars, is a coded map of this primordial wisdom. And it's more than a late addition. They claim this primordial magic was actually sanctioned by King Athelstan of England.
Of course. Everything has to trace back to a legendary English king to be official.
But look at the lineage they're building. They suggest this magical wisdom of the eye was carried out of Egypt after the flood and woven into the fabric of Anglo-Saxon culture, and eventually, through some pretty wild historical leaps, into the Knights Templar.
Right, the Templars. We've talked about them before, but the authors are adding this layer of Islamic infusion. They say the Templars spread a fresh stream of this Yazidi Persian esotericism across Europe.
So the Templars weren't just crusaders. They were basically cosmic distributors for these ancient star cults?
That's exactly the claim, and it gets even more specific. They mention a dubious line of heritage, linking the Templars to the Baron von Hund and his Order of the Temple in the 18th century.
Von Hund. I remember seeing that name in those weird archives. He was the one who claimed he was initiated by a Knight of the Red Pen, right?
Exactly, a Knight of the Red Pen, Cavalier Appena Rubra. And the book even hints that this mysterious figure might have been none other than Bonnie Prince Charlie himself.
No way. So the Jacobite pretender to the throne was a secret agent of ancient Egyptian Yazidi star magic? Man, the plot thickens.
It's getting ridiculous, Paco. But it's fascinating how they link these political figures to this red pen initiation. It makes the whole history feel like a spy novel written in blood.
It's more than that. They move from the politics to the actual stuff, the physical objects. They talk about the holographic pillars at the tomb of Jacques de Molay. They claim that on the night before his execution, de Molay told a confidant that the pillars contained gold coins and secret documents to fund the order's escape to Scotland.
A classic hidden treasure trope, very convenient for the survival of the myth.
But it's more than gold. It's the knowledge, and they tie it all back to the all-seeing eye being located in the third eye, or the pineal gland. It's the gateway to psychic gnosis.
Which brings us back to the Emerald Crest. They call it the Arkmardi, the stone in the crown of the Lightbringer.
Yes, and they place this emerald stone at the summit of the cosmic mountain, Mount Kaf, the axis of the North Star. It's the point of access to the Emerald Cities.
Okay, so we've got hollow pillars, secret gold, and a magical emerald in a mountain. Can we talk about the sword for a second? Because they bring up the Eastward Sword next.
This is where the Luciferian element becomes very, very visceral. They talk about the flaming sword that guards the Tree of Life. They link it to the Hebrew letter Zain, the blade, the sword.
It may say this isn't just a metaphor for a weapon, but a metaphor for initiatic purification by fire.
Precisely. They link it to the master of metals, Azazel. They claim the very skills of the blacksmiths working with fire, the forge, the anvil were the gifts the fallen brought to humanity.
So, magic is basically just advanced metallurgy? I shall enchant thee with the power of tempered steel.
In a way, yes. They argue that the inner fire, the sexual energy, the Kundalini is the spiritual version of the blacksmith's forge. The mastery of the inner forge is the goal.
It's a lot of heavy lifting for one chapter. They're jumping from blacksmiths to the all-seeing consciousness to the very structure of the universe.
But they tie it together with the symbol of the skull and crossbones. They say even this, the grim image found on Templar grave markers, is a long link to ancient serpentine traditions. It represents the incarnation of spiritual enlightenment through the death of the old self.
It's a beautiful, terrifying cycle. The death of the ego to reveal the unfailing witness behind it.
They end this section with a promise of restoration, that after the fall of the Watchers, Azazel will reclaim his heavenly realms.
A cosmic comeback story.
A comeback story that's been whispered in Egyptian crypts, Masonic lodges, and witch covens for millennia. We'll see if the restoration is coming next time.
My brain is officially full. I need a moment to process all this metallurgy.
Agreed. Let's take 5 and grab some water.